Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary. Well, let's discuss today's ruling at the High Court with Professor Cathryn Costello. She works at the Refugee Studies Centre at Oxford University and the Hertie School in Berlin, where she serves as co-director of the Centre for Fundamental Rights. Professor, thank you so much. Cathryn Costello, for joining us. Thank you very much indeed. Your thoughts, first of all, on this High Court ruling today?
It's deeply disappointing, mainly because the legal analysis is quite thin, particularly on three key points of international law, international principles, in fact, that I think warranted much deeper examination. The general risks to individuals if they're sent to Rwanda, the question about non-penalization, which I think the High Court did not examine extensively enough. Refugees should not be penalized for irregular entry or stay into countries in general. That's in the Refugee Convention. And questions about non-discrimination between different groups of refugees, and that only certain refugees end up being, in effect, penalized or gravely disadvantaged for their mode of entry into the UK.
So there were the 8 individual cases that we know the Home Secretary has been obliged to look at again. So what is, how much do you know, how much do we know about what is going on with those 8 particular cases?
Well, in the 8 individual cases, of course, all of the Home Secretary's decisions were found to be unlawful, which is indicative, I think, of wider systemic problems in Home Office decision-making. So it's very difficult to read the ruling as a vindication. What it means for those individuals is that their cases will have to be re-examined fully. And what the court really emphasizes is that before any individual could be returned to, or not returned, but sent to Rwanda, deported to Rwanda against their wishes, their individual circumstances have to be scrutinized very carefully. And that wasn't the case here. And there were a whole range of factual and procedural errors in each of the 8 individual cases. And if that's indicative of overall problems in Home Office decision-making, then obviously it indicates that the feasibility of ever returning to Rwanda is going to be in doubt.
I mean, we heard some of it from Suella Braverman there. We know that one of the arguments the government makes here is that it is trying to stop the crime of people smuggling. There are people we know out there benefiting financially, sometimes from people die on a very, very dangerous crossing. We report on it often. What is your take on that? The fact that the government says part of this is they want to stop that, which is cruel and unnecessary and benefits criminal gangs.
Well, there's very little evidence base to support the argument that a policy like this, which is after all very, very difficult to implement in any event, but is going to have any significant deterrent effect. Even if that logic was acceptable, but that would be the logic of saying we will treat one very vulnerable group of people cruelly in order to deter others from making dangerous journeys. I think we know a lot these days about how refugee situations can be managed differently through mobility, through safe access, and indeed the way that Ukrainian refugees are being welcomed, not only in the UK, but across the EU, is demonstrative evidence that refugee mobility can be enabled, and then refugees don't need to have recourse to smugglers.
Professor, thank you very much for your time for now. Thank you very much indeed. Professor Cathryn Costello there from the University of